Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 47 of the All Dolphins podcast, the Glenn Blackwood episode. Um, didn't choke on that one like I did on number 45.
It could be the Malik Reed episode.
Yes, absolutely. I keep forgetting about the current players. I don't know why. Maybe I'm trying to show off my historical knowledge. Who knows? It is Friday morning, what is it today? August 18th. We are still in Houston because of fun travel problems where our flight was delayed. Was it 4 or 5 times before finally being canceled?
Yeah, if they would have told us that maybe 4 hours earlier, we would have had a much more enjoyable time. But it is what it is.
Yeah.
I will never complain about doing work and being able to watch football for a living.
That's a very, very, very good point. And on this Friday morning, we wake up. Well, we knew the news already on Thursday later in the afternoon that it looks like the Dolphins avoided catastrophe with Terron Armstead, who on social media, Twitter, or sorry, X, is saying his
It
mindset.
will always be Twitter for me.
There you go. I have no problem with that. Who's basically saying somebody fell on him during the running play to Raheem Mostert in team drills, and his mindset is to be ready for week one. Now, that's not a guarantee, or it's not saying his mindset's for week one, but even then, better than what it could have been.
Yeah, we talk all the time about putting Terron in bubble wrap. I am guilty. David Ferrona asked me earlier before that practice if I thought Terron needed to practice, and I said yes, he did need to practice. If you need to ramp up, like there are very limited opportunities that you can get yourself ready for the season. I now have learned my lesson, and Terron Armstead will get himself ready for the season in the season.
And so basically, it's your fault, is what you're saying. So now we have
I
that.
take ownership for that. Yeah.
Okay, and also for us from the media standpoint, and even fans, we can get ready and prepared for another full season of every week. Asking Mike McDaniel on Mondays, what's Terron's status for the week? He'll be on the injury report for week one, and hopefully it won't last a whole year like it was last year, where it's 4 different body parts practically every week, and it got old actually a little bit. I mean, the dude played great when he was in the lineup, but man,
he's a very good player, though.
he's
Really
a great player.
Yeah.
And then the other news from Thursday to wrap up on is this free agent visit of Bryce Callahan, slot corner, formerly of the Bears, the Broncos, the Chargers, with a ton of experience with Vic Fangio. 4 years in Chicago, 3 years in Denver, even in one of those years he was hurt. Dude's a very good slot corner. If the Dolphins do wind up signing him, then it gives you more depth at slot number one, and gives you the flexibility. Callahan's a starter caliber player as a slot. Then you could move Cater to the boundary position and not have to worry about whether it needs to be Noah Benogany, Eli Apple, or Cam Smith in the debate as to who would start opposite X, which is a topic we will discuss a little bit later.
Yeah, the one thing I think that I'm going to take away from these joint practices with the Houston Texans is I'm starting to get concerned about the cornerback unit. As most of you know, if you paid attention to us, Poop cherry picked and made sure he watched the defense. We watched the offense all week, and I was stuck watching the defense again. And man, I gained some respect for Houston's receivers, and that was because Miami's cornerbacks struggled quite a bit with them this week. And I'm not saying that they put on an exhibition, but Nico Collins, boy, did I really learn his game, because he was roasting some cornerbacks. Noah looked like the old Noah returned, which was always our fear from the very beginning. And Eli Apple looked like an NFL journeyman who, is okay, and I am not a sheep who believes that Cam Smith is just going to be ready for the regular season. Shoulder injury for a cornerback that has to use his shoulders all the time is a bad look to put him out there. I watched them actually try to practice with him in 11-on-11s. It lasted all of 2 snaps before they realized it was a bad idea.
Okay, well, first of all, I'm going to set the record straight because you made me look bad here. You made me look like a Grinch or whatever. When the Atlanta Falcons came to Hard Rock Stadium for joint practices, I gave you first choice. You can
I did get first pick.
Okay,
and,
well,
and let me educate let me justify myself.
go ahead.
I wanted to see if Christian Wilkins was really that dude.
Yep.
Then all of a sudden Christian decides that like, oh, I'm holding in, so I'm not practicing. So, you know, it's like you drafted a player who got injured in his rookie season. I made a bad selection. I live with the consequences, and then in the second round, I lost out because you cherry picked the good selection.
Well, that sounds like a you problem, my friend. No, I wanted, and for me, sticking with the offense here in Houston is I wanted the continuity to see where the offense looked in relation to how it looked against the Falcons. And I will say the offense looked a little bit better than it did against the Falcons. And I will maintain again, regardless of whether people want to hear it or not, it's still not at the same level it was at this time last year when, yes, they were doing experimentation like they're doing this year.
No, I disagree.
Well, okay, you can disagree.
They were trying to get their language down and trying to figure out what they wanted to be, but it wasn't really experimentation.
By definition, if you're trying to figure out what you want to be, are you not experimenting?
I think Tua is doing more of testing things rather than trying to execute things, in my personal opinion. And, you know, for instance, you saw one day this week where tight ends were heavily involved. When do you see that at? Like, you understand what I'm saying?
Not this camp, but it happened last year. I mean, it wasn't like they ignored Gesicki and everybody else.
You try things and you try to see the capabilities of the players that you have. You try to see what passes work and don't work. And I'm not making excuses for them because I agree with you. No, I agree with you. This offense right now does not look like it was where it was last year. But they also don't have Jalen Waddle. They also kind of downgraded the tight end position. Say whatever you want about Mike Gesicki, and you know I'm not a big Mike Gesicki lover. They've also got a very unsettled offensive line where you pick who the left guard is because they can't.
Well, let's dive into that, shall we?
Okay, let's go for it.
Looking at that, because what we wanted to do today is kind of like look at the position battles, and left guard most definitely is one of them.
Yeah, left guard is at the top of the list for the position battles. I'm at the point where I'm taking Liam Eichenberg out of the competition. And, you know, whether he returns to the competition or not, cool. But supposedly there's an injury outside of confidence. And Liam Eichenberg clearly has a lot of work to do. And right now, your choices are Isaiah Wynn, Lester Cotton, Robert Jones. Who are you picking, Poupart?
One of those three guys.
Pick a favorite.
How's that for a short answer? I will tell you of the three, all three of them have had moments, and even in Houston here this week, I'd like to work of all three of them. I think the one who has consistently kind of stood out to me the most a little bit just might be Lester Cotton. And remember, this is a guy who started the playoff game at Buffalo last year. Although Robert Jones also started at guard when they had Robert Hunt start at right tackle in that particular game. But it's, again, I'm only throwing out the name because you asked me to make a pick, and I don't want to be a wimp and say it's really close. It could be anyone of three, because yes, I would not be surprised if it was any one of those three. You asked me for a prediction right now. I'll go ahead and say Lester Cotton.
You know, it's funny that you said that, and I didn't know what your answer would be, but I actually share the same answer as you. I actually watched Lester Cotton closely I watched the offensive line closely, and I watched the offensive line in the Falcons game closely, and I was impressed with Lester Cotton. I was a little bit surprised. I never gave him any thought before that game. I never really even factored it. You know, I'd see him working in there with the first team. I'm like, Lester Cotton? Who's Lester Cotton? What's, why are we doing this? Why are we wasting snaps? And it looks pretty good.
There's something there.
There is something there, and that's what. And I say this. I think the battle is going to be won by Isaiah Wynn, because you can't have 40 starts of experience, and that just means nothing. But I will say this: I haven't been thoroughly impressed with what I've seen from Isaiah Wynn. But now, if you put Isaiah Wynn in the starting lineup and you give him that opportunity against the Houston Texans, and I think that's where the test sample size should be, unless you really want to take a look at Robert Jones and Isaiah and Lester Cotton and see what the upside is, because you know who Isaiah Wynn is. Isaiah Wynn is safe. His $3.2 million contract means he's going to be here. I look at this roster and I say they got to pick Lester Cotton or Robert Jones. I don't know if they can have both on their 53-man roster.
No, and that's the other issue along the offensive line is there's somebody who could go from competing for a starting job to being off the team.
Exactly.
Because you know the five guys up front.
And Isaiah Wynn's contract is guaranteed. Dan Feeney's contract is guaranteed. You're not throwing them away. And Kendall Lamb is a lock to be on this roster. So that gives you 8 already.
And Eichenberg starting or not, more than likely is on your roster.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So now you made me think, could they trade Eichenberg? Interesting. Maybe somebody still has value, still sees value in him.
That's interesting thought. No, it's an interesting thought.
Yeah, you trade him for somebody's tight end. Maybe they like him. You never know. Remember, we talked about this yesterday, and we both heard the same thing from different people. When Isaiah Wynn was in the draft, he was like the safest bet as an offensive lineman.
No, Eichenberg.
Yeah, Eichenberg. When Eichenberg was in this draft, he was viewed as the safest bet. And as we know with Chris Greer's drafting history with offensive linemen, he needed a safe bet. And here we are, we roll snake eyes.
No, correct. And the one hope, because I can my wheels were spinning there thinking a second, like, okay, well, why would anybody trade for Eichenberg if you're trading him because he basically wasn't good enough to handle a left guard job? Well, here's the thing. This is where the Dolphins try to convince a team outside of, like, he's just not a great fit for our scheme. He's a perfect fit for your scheme right there. Then this guy was considered, as we mentioned, a safe finished product coming out of Notre Dame. Yeah, we're going to do you a favor. We're going to let you get him in a trade. Just throw us something in return.
I mean, we're not talking about high value trade. We're here talking about late draft picks, or you give me your trash, I give you my trash. Like, and we figure out what. No offense for those who think I'm calling.
Man,
I'm just saying, you give me
your. I hear.
Yeah.
So don't expect a first round pick in return.
Yeah, no. Don't expect a 4th round pick in return. 5th. Chris Greer has made more trades than any executive in the NFL. If you don't think he's on the phone right now trying to find pieces that can patch up this roster, which needs a lot of patching. And I know Dolphin fans don't get the point that I continue to try to make about how watered down your roster is, because you're very top heavy, but your backups are not very good. And your team is going to get exposed when those backups have to play. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Let's get to our next battle, which is one that has my irritable bowel syndrome acting up. It's Noah. It's your cornerback, boundary cornerback spot, not Cater, not your nickel. And for those who don't understand, Cater has to stay at nickel because, one, he's your only nickel right now, healthy nickel right now. And 2, that's a position that they view as his long-term position in the NFL, especially with Jalen Ramsey on the roster. So you need to find a guy to get 500 snaps from this season as the other boundary guy until maybe Nick Needham comes back, which is not going to be anytime soon, or until Jalen Ramsey comes back, which maybe in your dreams will be in December. You got Noah Igbenogany, Cam Smith, who I think is not even a consideration for it right now because of that shoulder injury, and Eli Apple. Where you going? Pope?
I'm signing Bryce Callahan and putting Cater outside for the time being. I think that makes it. That might be the way to go. And this is where the Nick Needham injury causes issues, because if he weren't hurt, he'd be your slot guy, and chances are Cater would work outside, even though I am of the opinion as well that Cater, I think, is a better fit for the slot than he is for the boundary. But of the other guys, and again, I focus on the offense here in Houston. I'm relying on what you have told me and what you've written on alldolphins.com about Noah maybe taking a step back. The question now is going to be, is it the start of something of a slide, or is it just a blip? And if it's just a blip, a hiccup, and Noah goes back to looking the way he has looked in training camp, where for the most part he has been very solid, then I think you go with him. It may be, though, that Eli Apple is, I mean, I don't know if the safer choice is the right way to put it, but for lack of a better term, the safer choice, because there's less of an unknown if you stick him outside. You know what he is, which is a decent starting outside cornerback, whereas Noah could go in a lot of different directions because he's still a little bit unknown, playing in a scheme that requires more zone coverage than man coverage. So if, again, prediction time, I will go Eli Apple.
It's funny you say that, because now we're 2 for 2. I'm going Eli Apple from the standpoint or the viewpoint of, I know what I'm going to get. It's serviceable. Whereas, I'm sorry, and I have talked up Noah a lot during this podcast. I've talked up Noah a lot during training camp. It took 2 practices for me to have the old Noah flashbacks. And they have returned. And my thought is, could he be in his head again? Does he have to be absolutely protected by the scheme? Could an injury lead to the Noah that I know returning? Because, their bodies are starting to wear down at this point. Guys need days off. And my bigger concern with what's going on at that other spot is, now I'm going to have X shadow. Now I'm going to have, and X doesn't want a shadow. Yeah, like, we can say whatever we want about how, the prominence of the shadow and how important it is. And like, X is in a contract year. Ignore whatever you see on his contract. This is contract year. And while he would love the reputation of being a shadow cornerback, he don't want that action all season long. You understand what I'm saying?
No,
especially when you're
I
trying
agree.
you're trying to get your money.
I agree. I think I think he likes it for pride purposes.
Yes.
At times, but like you said, not.
But now it's time to make business decisions for X.
X does that?
Just a little bit. Just
like he told Christian Wilkins, get your money.
Yeah. X is, and I love X, because X is a businessman. X is how I would operate if I were in the NFL. X is a businessman playing football. And it's bad business to shadow this year, when you know where you are in terms of your guaranteed money is up. And as a businessman, when your guaranteed money is up, your deal is up. Ask Emmanuel Agba.
Correct. And this is what we're talking about, that Omar referenced, that X is in a contract here. Technically, he signed for a couple more years, but he's got no more guaranteed money beyond this year. What he'll have, and beyond the prorated portion of the signing bonus. So this is where, and he's got a very high cap hit. I think I just saw it was 25 million for next year. So
cap hit isn't real. Don't ever mention cap hit again. That's fake money.
No, the dead space is fake money. Is what you keep. The cap number is not fake. Is not fake money. It's space on the salary cap. Why do you keep waving your hand like this?
Because cap hit is not real. A cap hit and dead money is not real. What's real is your base salary, how much money you're going to be making for that year, and whether or not the team feels that you're worth that.
How much cap space you take up, because there's a limit on the cap space you have. Of course, the cap space.
He's on the books for $18.5 million, which includes a $3 million roster bonus, which means they will decide whether X is worth $18.5 million in 2024, or if he's not worth it. He does have $4 million in guarantees that are due on March 18th. So he will be able to hit free agency before, before free agency begins. So ultimately, unless X is a Pro Bowler and an elite player, the Dolphins are not honoring that contract.
Okay, but the point I'm trying to make is, for some reason, and you keep kind of pushing it to the side. As it stands right now, according to overthecap.com, he counts 25 million against the cap, which the number of which will be, what's the projected cap number for next year? Off the top of my head, 230 million or something like that. That's
None of it
10%.
matters. None of it matters. None of it matters. You know why? Because it's an option year for the team. They can cut him as a June 1st cut.
Dude, that's my point. That's my point I'm trying to make, is that if they don't touch it, this is what we're talking about. It's a contract year. If they don't touch his contract, he takes up a good chunk of your salary cap, which is why they could adjust in a number of different ways, either restructuring his contract to lower the cap number. I'm not talking about money or dead cap hit. I'm talking about the salary cap number against the overall limit that the team has. And this is what we're talking about when we're talking about extending Christian and all that. This is where the issue the Dolphins have. I'm not talking about dead cap space and all that. I'm talking about getting everybody under the salary cap.
Okay, all right. But ultimately, I think Eli Apple is the better option right now because he's more stable until Cam Smith gets cleared from the shoulder, which, I'm sorry, that's going to take at least a month. Your shoulder doesn't miraculously heal. It just doesn't. I watched him not be able to take on a block against a Houston Texans wide receiver who drove him 10 yards downfield to immediately tell the coaches, like, you got to get him off. And that doesn't just miraculously heal at the snap of a finger.
And even then, right now, he's missing valuable reps and all that. And it reminds me a little bit of the aforementioned Xavier Howard. When he was a rookie, he had knee issues in training camp, and that kind of slowed his development. And if you remember, X didn't become X until his second year in 2017. So, next position.
Let's get to the starting strong safety, or I don't really view it as a strong safety. I think you need two twin free safeties in my mind for this defense, because I see Jevon Holland doing a lot of things that don't necessarily mean him roaming back center field. Deshaun Elliott, Brandon Jones, Elijah Campbell, Trill Williams. And I add in Trill Williams with a little bit of a caution, because I really haven't seen him practice that much at safety. And I don't know what's going on over there on that with Trill Williams, because I don't even know if he makes a 53-man roster.
I agree with you. He's on the bubble right now, but I went first for the other two positions. So guess what? You go first.
Oh, wow. You do me like that.
Yeah.
I'm going. I think Deshaun Elliott will begin the season, and you hope you can hold it down until you find a solution. I do believe that the solution is Elijah Campbell. I think if I'm going to evaluate the safety play that I've seen and say who is the best safety to play next to Jevon Holland, it would be Elijah Campbell, because Elijah Campbell's range and roaming ability allows Jevon to do a lot of other things. Deshaun Elliott does not do that. Brandon Jones does not do that. Elijah can also go in there and handle the slot position. Elijah also has experience as a cornerback. However, the problem with when you elevate Elijah Campbell is you're now losing who I would rank as the number one special teams player on the team, not including the kickers. Elijah Campbell does a lot of the tough man work, the gunner work. And as we both discussed on this podcast, you can play for 12 years in the NFL as a gunner.
All right.
Because it's such a valuable, important position. So if I move Elijah Campbell, right now I think it's probably going to be a double duty situation thing. But then when you do that, you're telegraphing what you're doing, because you're not putting a Mike Gesicki on defense onto the field. From the standpoint of, When you put Deshaun Elliott on the field, you know he's going to be in the box. So you know who's high and who's low at safety. When you put Elijah Campbell on the field, you don't know who's going to be in the box. So it kind of, you cannot telegraph your defense just like you can't telegraph your offense, which is why Elijah Campbell should be the lead. But unfortunately, I don't know if they feel comfortable enough making the lead because he would impact negatively special teams unit.
Well,
you following me?
Well, and Lord knows we don't want to impact the special teams considering how great they were last year. Whoop! No, they weren't. So maybe Mike McDaniel and Vic Fangio talk, and they're like, screw the special teams. They sucked last year anyway. So not Elijah Campbell, that's going to all of a sudden make that unit respectable or even good. And you brought up a very interesting point, and that's the idea of being able to disguise more things pre-snap. And a lot of what Vic Fangio's defense does is disguise and, give different looks. And I think this is where Elijah Campbell becomes a very good option. And I think he's probably a superior cover guy than Deshaun Elliott. Deshaun Elliott's a good fallback because, again, if you want to go comfortable, take the safer option. He's got a lot more experience playing defense than Elijah Campbell does. I'm going to go ahead here to predict. I'm going to be bold because that's the kind of guy I am, and I'll go Elijah Campbell.
It's interesting. We both just overlooked the Brandon Jones.
Well, number one, Brandon Jones is dealing. Let him get a full week of practice in before we can consider him for a starting role. Number one. Number two, if the reservations you have about Deshaun Elliott is you got to put him close to the box because what he does more is about physicality, not so much about coverage. Well, that's Brandon Jones, whose forte is as a blitzer and a great one at that, and he's a very good tackler. The one question mark and red flags about Brandon Jones always has been his coverage ability. And I know he's not particularly happy about hearing that when it comes up, but those are the facts.
Let's move on to our another starting spot that is kind of vacant, and that would be the third receiver role. We've got Braxton Berrios, who obviously is strictly a slot, unless you tell me otherwise based on what he's done this week. No, okay.
Not that I could tell you where he lined up. I'm just saying his skill set and NFL experience is as a slot.
Where did he line up?
I don't think I can say.
Okay. Eric Uzukama.
But like I said, his skill set and a previous NFL experience as a slot.
Eric Uzukama, who had a whoa kind of preseason opening game against the Falcons. And I would love to see him get probably about 4 to 5 plays called for him again this week against the Houston Texans. And then again, Robbie Chosen, who has been one of camp's great mysteries. I think Robbie has come alive this week, right? I don't know because I didn't watch all.
A little bit.
Yeah, no,
not a ton. I don't know if he had any. I don't recall him catching a pass yesterday. I know he had a couple on Wednesday, and I don't think he caught one ball yesterday. Not one. And here's I'm gonna go all grouch, Grinch, and all that. Can we talk about Eric Uzukama's whole body of work in training camp and how it's been solid and not overblow what he did in the preseason opener? What did he do? He had 2 long runs, one of which was an end around that Atlanta misplayed, was perfectly blocked, and I would suggest any wide receiver on the Dolphin roster would have gained the same amount of yardage. Now I'll give a major.
I don't.
I said, tell me if you've ever heard this. I said what I said. Now on the jet sweep, I will give him major props because he had an Atlanta defender who met him at the line and he broke the tackle. That was an impressive play. So for me, it was like, okay, he had one really good run. And then the other one, again, it was a play that was perfectly schemed up and was wide open to run outside to gain the 39 yards. Anyway.
But I don't think you're being fair because he has suffered an injury.
So now so now we're grading him. I'm just talking about his performance against Atlanta, where everybody's blowing it up because he had 2 runs for 52 yards.
He had a good, strong first week of camp. Not injured.
See, now you're proving my point, because I said, can we talk about Ezukama in the context of his whole training camp and not overblow the preseason opener?
Okay, well, let's talk about it.
No, he's been solid. He's been solid.
Hold on. He had a strong first week, seemingly being tested for the number 3 role, kind of locked it up, got injured, missed the second week, didn't practice all of the joint practices, had a pretty damn good game, top 3 performer, right? Yes? No?
Why? Because he had a 39-yard run on an end around. I mean, I don't know.
It was him, Myles Gaskin, and Channing Tindall, and we both know how we feel about Channing Tindall. Like, performance.
If you're looking strictly at the stats, yes. But
okay. Ezukama brings something different to the receiving core that nobody else brings. He brings a toughness there. That could be an element that you add plays to add a new dimension to your offense that you did not have last season. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. Finally knows the offense.
Or so we think.
Or so he says.
Okay.
So he says. So I'm actually going to go against the grain. Bless you.
Thank you.
And I'm going to say, based on how he performs the next 2 weeks, Eric Ezukama can lock up a starting spot, lock up that number 3 spot, because I think Tyreek's best position is the slot. That's where I think Tyreek does his most damage. So I need a guy outside. I need a guy who can give me those red zone throws. Now, you know how I feel about Chosen. I don't even know if he makes the 53-man roster, but I think he has the talent to hold you down till Jalen Waddle comes back. And I'm not of the opinion that Jalen Waddle is just instantly coming back and will be ready for the regular season. I think maybe
we don't know. We don't know.
Yeah, it's early, but he's actually, you know what? Probably takes 4 weeks for a broken rib to heal. Not that I say it's a broken rib or think it's
in the event that would be the issue he's dealing with.
In the event that would be the issue, that's a month, right?
Okay. Well, then he'd be back for the opener. Here's my thing, though, and this is where I'm going to take the wimpy way out and then the unwimpy way out. I think it's going to be a mixture where every game you could see somebody different based on the matchups and what they want to accomplish. If they want more size and more Hill and Waddle in the slot, then Ezukama lines up as your 3rd wide receiver. If they want speed or more speed, maybe Hill and Waddle on the outside, then Berrios in the slot another way. Or then the ultra speed package would be Hill, Waddle, and Robbie Chosen.
You're absolutely right. They will be looking at who is the Noah Igbenogany of the team that they're facing and attacking that player.
How do we attack him best? Having said all that, my prediction for who's going to get the 3rd most snaps at wide receiver has been and remains, again, health obviously being out of the equation, is Braxton Berrios.
Okay. Quarterback number 2, Mike White versus Skylar Thompson. Are we still talking about? There is no battle for the number 2 quarterback job. I'm sorry. Hold on. Hear me out. Hear me out. Skylar comes into the game, the second half, both games, lights it up. Does the Skylar Thompson magic.
Okay.
You don't think he can jockey that spot?
Not unless Mike White's a complete train wreck if he plays before him. And again, if he's going to light it up against the bottom 3rd of the roster of the Texans and then the Jaguars the following week, that carries less weight than if you were to do it against more frontline players. And this is where I don't know if we don't know what the quarterback rotation is going to be on Saturday. If it's going to be Skylar gets the first half this time, Mike White gets the second half. I honestly don't see a battle. I think to me, it's 90-10 Mike White's your number 2 quarterback.
It's 80-20, but I agree with you.
You just have to throw out a different number just to disagree.
No, it's not 90-10. I think that I think that Skyler, a poor performance by Mike White and a good performance by Skyler, I think we could see a leapfrog. We could
Off
see
of
a
one preseason game,
what's Mike White done?
looked consistently better than Skyler has.
You watched offense, so I'll allow it.
Thank you.
Let's go with our look at who is going to be the fourth running back. Myles Gaskin did not practice all this week.
Sure.
I don't know if it was an issue or injury. Looked pretty damn good. I would say the top performer against the Falcons. And then we got Salvon Ahmed, who I don't know. Like, I've always liked Salvon. Now with Devon Achane here, he's a carbon copy of what you already have. Does he give you value on special teams? You know, if Salvon was a gunner, I'd be like, he's here.
And I find it sad that we're completely dismissing Chris Brooks, who I really like, but
but Chris Brooks is safely on my practice squad. He's a young man that I would like to. I like him. I agree with you. I think he's a young man that I definitely want to take a look at, much more substantive look at. And now whoever doesn't make that fourth, whether it's Myles or Gaskin, if they're not claimed, they definitely have work on my practice squad.
Correct. No, and you raised a good point that I think last week we talked on the podcast in that, or maybe it was me, I don't remember. That Salvon Ahmed's skill set is so similar to that of Devon Achane, with a little bit less explosiveness, that it's almost a duplication there, whereas Myles Gaskin gives you a little bit something different in terms of maybe a little bit more toughness, maybe a little bit more dependability in the passing game and all that. So why, if you're going to keep an extra fourth running back, why are you keeping Ahmed if you already have Achane instead of Gaskin? I have said to you before, and you called me crazy, and you're going to call me crazy again, because that's what you do. Wouldn't necessarily shock me if they kept three halfbacks with 2 or 3 on the running back and elevate as
on the practice squad. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's get to our final position.
If it's a fourth right now, I would say Myles Gaskin. Go ahead.
Final position with at tight end, Eric Saubert or Tyler Kroft.
This is assuming that the other two are Dermot Smythe and
Elijah Higgins. Yes, off draft status alone.
Punt.
That's exactly what they did at the tight end position.
Kind of, sort of, yeah.
They ran the ball 3 times and punted.
It is not a tight end centric offense. That is for sure. At this, I haven't seen anything especially dazzling from either one of them. I'll be honest with you. I would tell you that if the idea is to go with a blocking tight end, every time I see Tyler Kroft on the field, I'm going, man, that guy's big. So having said that, I'll go with him as my pick.
At this point, I'm going to have to keep Tyler Kroft because I watch Eric Saubert closely in special teams, and it was not good. And I'm like, bro, you've lasted this long in the NFL and you're not good at special teams. How does that happen? So maybe that improves in the next 2 games, but tight end is on the waiver wire for me.
Okay, that's going to have to do it. Omar, next time we do this is going to be after the Houston game, which is tomorrow at 4 p.m. In the meantime, subscribe, download, subscribe. And then on the Fans First Sports Network, where you get your audio podcasts. So Omar, we'll see you on the plane in a bit. Hopefully we actually leave Houston this time.